Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're heading over to the Caucasus, to Tbilisi, Georgia. We're going to dig into its urban evolution, looking at its architecture and history.
I think everyone listening is going to be fascinated by this one.
Yeah, this is some really interesting stuff. Have you ever heard the phrase, like, a city with soul?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Tbilisi really embodies that.
Definitely.
It's this amazing blend of ancient history and modern aspirations. East meets west, every brick tells a story.
I mean, it really does.
So we're going to try and uncover what gives Tbilisi its genius loci.
Yeah, what is that special something that makes a place unforgettable?
And, just looking at photos of Tbilisi, you really get a sense of it. You see those colorful balconies almost stacked on top of each other?
Right, very
Feels like
good.
the city was built for conversations across balconies.
Absolutely. Those balconies are more than just pretty to look at. They speak to Tbilisi's history. That mix of cultures, Persian, Armenian, Russian, they've all left their mark, shaped the city. Think about it. Bustling marketplaces,
Yeah.
artisans showing off their work, that constant flow of merchants and travelers on those Silk Road routes.
Tbilisi was a real crossroads,
Oh, yeah.
which makes its early growth sound almost organic. But then, how did Tbilisi change under Soviet rule? Because that era was all about these grand plans, right?
That's right, uniformity.
Yeah, uniformity.
The Soviets, they wanted to reshape Tbilisi in their image, impose their vision of a modern, industrialized city. They launched these huge housing projects, prioritized public
And
transportation,
of course, the metro.
especially the metro system. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't, but I've seen pictures.
It's a sight to behold, but we'll talk about that more later.
Yeah, the Tbilisi metro, it's like this symbol of Soviet ambition. I've heard it's stunning. Some even say artistic.
Oh, yeah, it is.
But I can imagine that these changes, these large-scale changes, weren't without challenges.
You're telling me, look, everyone praised the metro system for how efficient it was, how well designed it was, but, they had to build fast. Sometimes quality suffered. And those apartment blocks, sure, they were practical, but they made everything look the same. It was such a stark contrast to Tbilisi's historically diverse character.
And that tension, right, between wanting to preserve Tbilisi's unique identity and the pressures of modernizing. It's something we're going to see a lot as we go deeper.
And I imagine that tension only intensifies as we move into the post-Soviet era.
Oh, absolutely.
That transition from a centrally planned economy to one driven by the market, that had to be tumultuous.
You can say that again. The Rose Revolution in 2004, that was a turning point. New leadership, a shift towards liberal economic policies. It was like opening the floodgates for foreign investment.
Wow.
Rapid development, new architectural styles, everything was changing. Tbilisi was trying to find its footing, balancing this newfound freedom with the weight of its past. What a balancing act. So what did that do to Tbilisi's urban fabric? Did it manage to keep its unique character amidst all this change?
That's where things get really interesting. And to understand it, let's talk about the Iberia Hotel.
Okay, the Iberia Hotel. I have seen pictures of that.
What a story.
That imposing, almost futuristic building, right? Overlooking the Kura River.
You got it. Its story has more twists and turns than you can imagine. The Soviets built it as a symbol of their ambition, but then later on, it became a refuge for internally displaced persons. After those conflicts in Abkhazia and South Ossetia, what a change, right?
So it's like the Iberia. It became this microcosm of what the city was going through.
Totally.
The social and political upheaval. You've got this grand Soviet structure juxtaposed with the realities of a newly independent nation dealing with internal displacement.
That's it. The Iberia became this powerful reminder of the human cost of these huge transformations. And then later, they controversially demolished it to make way for a new luxury hotel. And that sparked a whole debate about historical preservation versus economic progress, a debate that's still going on today.
That debate's not unique to Tbilisi, though.
Not at all.
It feels like every city around the world is wrestling with that same question. How do you embrace modernization without erasing your history in the process?
This is a tough one.
So with all these changes, did Tbilisi manage to hold on to those elements that give it that genius loci we were talking about? What happened to those lively public spaces, the courtyards, the balconies, those places where life spilled out into the streets?
That's the key question. And it leads us to another chapter in Tbilisi's urban evolution, the fight for public space. Back in the 1990s, construction boomed in the city, but it was unregulated. Developers encroached on parks, green spaces, those very elements that made Tbilisi so charming.
So it wasn't just about grand Soviet plans or sleek modern buildings. It was about the spaces in between.
Exactly.
The places where people gathered and connected, where they experienced the city's rhythm.
That's it. In Tbilisi, those spaces, they might seem insignificant, but they hold so much cultural value. They're the embodiment of the city's genius loci, its spirit, its soul. And the people recognized that. They saw the threat to these precious public spaces and they raised their voices against it.
So people really pushed back against that unchecked development, huh?
They did, they did. It reminds us that cities aren't just shaped by architects and urban planners.
It's the people who actually live in these spaces every single day.
It's their city, and thankfully all that activism, it actually led to some changes. Tbilisans, they recognized what was happening, that their city's soul was at risk, and they demanded a more balanced approach to development. They got that preserving Tbilisi's character meant protecting its public spaces.
Those places where that genius loci really shines through. It makes you wonder, though, how do you strike that balance? How do you make room for growth, attract investment, modernize everything, but do it in a way that doesn't erase what's already there?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it's one that Tbilisi's is still figuring out. One of the big challenges is that, well, believe it or not, the city doesn't really have a comprehensive, up-to-date master plan.
Wait, really? No master plan? How can you even begin to manage all that growth, all that development, without some kind of roadmap?
It's a problem. The last master plan they had, it was drafted back in the 1970s during the Soviet era.
Wow!
There have been attempts to make a new one, but they never quite get there.
So they're trying to navigate 21st century urban development with a Soviet-era playbook.
Pretty much. And you can imagine that leads to some interesting situations, like take suburbanization, for example.
Oh, right, the classic urban sprawl issue. Is Tbilisi falling into that same trap? Sprawling suburbs, single-family homes, shopping malls, everyone stuck in traffic.
It's not exactly the same as, say, what you'd see in the US, but there is that outward pressure. They're expanding these existing settlements on the outskirts, building high-rises, but often without thinking about infrastructure or the existing landscape.
So less about white picket fences and more about extending those old Soviet-era patterns of development.
Kind of, yeah. And then you have these gated communities popping up, which cater to a wealthier demographic. So you start to see this fragmentation.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this.
It makes you question how equitable things are, right? Access to amenities, public spaces, even just a sense of belonging within the city.
It's fascinating how, different forces, Soviet planning, market forces, can end up having these similar consequences. They both shape the social and spatial dynamics of a city in these really complex ways.
It's true, but it's encouraging. The people of Tbilisi, they're not just sitting back. They're actively involved in shaping the future of their city.
Oh, right. Those citizen-led movements we talked about earlier.
They're gaining traction.
So it's not just about protesting what they don't want, but actually proposing alternatives.
Exactly. There's a growing understanding that urban planning needs to be more inclusive, more sustainable, and it needs to actually listen to the residents. People are organizing workshops, talking to experts, coming up with innovative solutions that prioritize things like public transportation, green spaces, and preserving Tbilisi's unique architecture.
I love that. It shows that even when faced with these massive challenges like rapid development or outdated planning, people can still reclaim their cities. They have a voice and they can shape their own future.
That's what it's all about. And it brings us back to that idea of genius loci. It's not some fixed thing. It evolves.
So the question isn't just how to preserve Tbilisi's soul, but how to make sure it thrives in the 21st century, right?
Yeah.
How do those balconies stay full of life? How do we make sure those courtyards stay these vibrant gathering places? How did Tbilisi keep enchanting people, both visitors and residents?
You hit the nail on the head. It's about finding a way to connect Tbilisi's past to its future. It's about respecting its history while embracing innovation. And most of all, it's about giving citizens the power to shape the urban landscape they want to live in.
It really seems like the future of Tbilisi is being written right now.
It is, and the citizens hold the pen.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive bystanders in our cities. We can shape their destiny.
That's right. We're not powerless. And, it's not always about these grand visions or these massive master plans.
It's the everyday stuff, right?
It's the little things, the small interventions, the collective will of the people. That's what really shapes a city's character.
So what can Tbilisi, what can its story teach us about how we approach urban development in the 21st century? What insights can we glean?
I think one of the biggest takeaways here is the importance of really understanding and valuing a city's genius loci. that intangible spirit that makes it unique. It's about recognizing that we shouldn't just be focused on efficiency or profit when we talk about urban development. It's about creating spaces where people feel a sense of belonging, a connection to place.
It makes you really appreciate those seemingly insignificant details.
Oh, sure.
The balconies, the courtyards, the rhythm of daily life in public spaces, these things can get overlooked when we're just chasing progress,
Yeah.
but they're crucial.
They're everything because they give a city its soul. And preserving that genius loci, it takes a delicate balance, honoring the past while embracing the future.
Finding ways to integrate new developments in a way that complement the existing urban fabric, not erase it.
Exactly.
It's like, have you ever seen those buildings? The modern structures that blend so seamlessly with ancient ruins?
I know you.
That's what it's about. Thoughtful design, a deep respect for history.
You got it. Progress doesn't have to come at the expense of heritage. In fact, it's often the combination of old and new that makes a city truly vibrant.
Tbilisi's story is such a fascinating one. From its Silk Road origins to its Soviet transformation, and now navigating this market-driven economy. It's a city facing real challenges, but it's got this resilience, this deep-rooted desire to forge its own path.
And that's the biggest lesson we can take away from Tbilisi. It's an ongoing process, this constant back and forth between preservation and progress. But ultimately, the power rests with the people who live there. They shape the city they want to live in.
So the next time you're walking through a city, whether it's Tbilisi or your own town, take a moment to appreciate what makes it special. Those little details that whisper its story. Engage with its history, imagine its future, but most importantly, remember that you have a role to play in shaping it, in shaping its genius loci.
Beautifully said. It's a team effort, and the more we understand the forces that shape our cities, the more informed and empowered we become. We can all contribute to creating those urban spaces that aren't just functional, but inspiring, inclusive, a reflection of the people who call them home.
That is a thought-provoking note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Tbilisi's urban evolution. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping the world around you.